Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mohit from Moneyfront. We are coming to you live on this Facebook session after a very long while. It's a lockdown scenario for all of us, and we have figured out a technological way of reaching out to you through Facebook. And I hope you will enjoy this session. I'm just waiting for Swaroop to join us. Hi, Swaroop. How are
Hey,
you?
hi Mohit, how are you? Good to see you.
Absolutely, so good to see you. And look how technology has gotten us together again.
I completely agree with you. These last 2.5, 3 months has changed everything for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is so fantastic. Actually, I wasn't aware that we could even conduct a Facebook live session and perhaps go live on multiple screens together. So this is good find for us.
You, I'm a movie guy, so like Jurassic Park, when I saw, I've got the statement of my life, which is life finds a way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant way to start. Life finds its way, and so are we all finding our way in this COVID scenario, in this pandemic scenario, and in obviously markets. So perhaps today we won't speak so much about COVID as much as we speak about markets, and we have Swaroop with us. I'll just quickly take 2 minutes to introduce Swaroop to all our guests. Swaroop is the India CEO of Mirai Asset Management, Mirai Mutual Fund House. He's been with Mirai since July of 2011. That's a fairly long time. He started his career with Mirai as the sales head, and now he manages the entire business for the AMC. And AMC obviously has done wonderfully well under your leadership, Swaroop. So many congratulations for a great journey. And
Thank
Swaroop
you.
incidentally has also spent a lot of time with other AMCs, Aditya Birla, Franklin, Kotak, right? So Swaroop, why don't you just, let's just start the session. Why don't you just take 2 minutes and share your journey in the mutual fund industry so far with our viewers?
You see, I come from the NBFC background in the late 90s. That was where one would work for as a fresh MBA pass out. Those were the days of merchant banking, if you please. But I got a career into mobilization of funds. I would sell FDs, and then when that market sort of ended, mutual fund was the natural progression. And since 1996, this is 97. This is all that I've done, and I'm so happy that I work for a transparent product which tells you the value on a daily basis, and portfolios disclosed. So no better place for me, and I've been doing it for so long, and I hope I end my career with this only, and that's the whole wish.
Completely. And we wish you equally good luck and all the success in this journey. You've obviously created a lot of milestones with Mirai and for yourself. So we hope the journey continues and you never have to move back to an NBFC kind of a thing. I'm
No,
hopeful
no.
mutual funds, mutual funds will provide all of us enough opportunities. Okay,
Correct.
so without getting into further delay, Swaroop, I think just to give you a perspective, at Moneyfront, we were amongst the first online digital platforms in the country to go live with direct plans of mutual fund in 2016. And since then, we have carried on this journey. And all our clients are fairly mature in the sense that they understand the nitty-gritties of mutual funds. And today, they would like to hear from you perhaps a CEO's vision of how the markets look like. And so just to get into this thing, look, I think 2020 has been a very different year. We started with almost like 12,500 on Nifty, came down to 7,800, went back to almost 10,000 in a quick jiffy, and all this in like 5 months. So
Correct.
so what do you really make out of markets? How do you decipher this kind of volatility?
No, before coming to that answer, Mohit, I have known you from your banking days. And when you started off with Moneyfront, it's just been amazing to see your journey and how you've gone about it in a very systematic manner. So all credit to you for putting this up in such a short time. I had absolutely no doubt in my mind, and in our team, we would discuss that Mohit has started, and I have very high regards for the way you set it up. So credit to you, and I wish you well always, and being a big fan of the way you've conducted yourself. So
Thank you
all
so much.
credit to you. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the broad market and you look at what's happened in the last 5 months, there are two things which strike me. And the first thing is, let's look at some numbers. Okay. When you look at the 5 months in particular from a net basis, The FIs have sold a net of say 5 billion, while the DIs, which is the domestic investors, have bought around 11 billion. That's the mathematics. So from a 5 months perspective, just a net of around 6 billion is what is creating this entire volatility curve as we've seen, which probably the last time we saw it was in 2008 or 2009. But when you take this back to just March, this difference which I'm talking about, which is just 6 billion, was just 4 billion. But with just 4 billion, which is what, some 28, 30,000 or maybe 35,000 crores of Indian rupees, the market had crashed almost 35%. It just reflects one major part which we've been highlighting since 2016 is the lack of liquidity in the market. And that's something which one has to keep in mind always when you look at the market, because there has to be enough possibilities. Otherwise, the markets could remain polarized like they were in the near term in the past, right? So that's one point which I'd like to point out from a figures perspective. The other one is something which we've been told time and again, and it's come out in front of us again, is that the market has its own behavior, right? And invariably that behavior has proven most of the experts wrong over a period of time. Just when you think the markets were set to sort of correct further, say last month, they reversed. Right now, a lot of us are trying to figure out why it has reversed, and a lot of us are trying to predict when is the next crash. And then, so the second point, which is the most important point always when it comes to capital markets or equity markets in particular, predicting markets is always a futile job.
Yeah.
So these are the two things which strike me from a market perspective always.
Interesting. So yeah, I completely agree. The flows also have been choppy, and predicting markets has always been a game of dice, actually. So
Correct.
The chances are as strong as you getting 6 in every roll. So that's how it is. Okay, so we get you. But Swaroop, what has of late happened is, and there was this lot of decoupling chat couple of years back. But of late, we've all realized that Indian markets wake up to US markets every day, right? You sleep the way US markets sleep, and you wake up the way US markets wake up. And it's like a single line trend that we follow global markets and we follow the global narratives to the head. So do you think is that the way to track markets, or you think there is fundamentally a standing for markets also, or we are like completely following a global narrative?
See, when you look at it from a broad level or the broad narrative of the market, what you say is looking like we are following the US market. But if you just scratch the top and follow it from a stock or a sector perspective, you will realize that you are following absolute fundamentals there. Let's say, I'll give you some examples. Let's say banking. Okay. We know that the sector is in trouble in the near term, and hence the behavior of the underlying stocks. Financials invariably are the first sector which take a collapse and could be the first sector to bounce back to. Okay, so when you just scratch it and go a little deeper, this is the first time probably in my entire life that we've been able to differentiate between what is a staple and what is a discretionary. While we know staples will do very well in the near term as they cater to the needs of the people, the stocks have behaved accordingly. But when you look at the discretionary part, this has been the biggest fallout of COVID, right? Absolutely. Healthcare has not been impacted much, so the stocks have behaved accordingly. B2B or utilities, as we would call it, have not been impacted because people know that when the economy comes back, they will also come back. So net, though the broad narrative seems like we are following the US markets or the trends, but underlying, there is a lot of fundamentals which are acting, and I'm happy that there is a lot of sanity at the underlying level.
Very, very interesting. So, okay, just to come on to that, what do you make out of the Indian economy right now with all the news flow, with the kind of lockdown we have had, which is perhaps stringent across the globe? In your perspective, in the perspective of Mirai's research team, where do you see the economy headed? When do you see the real bounce back coming? What is it like from your view?
See, from the economy perspective, let's look at it from two aspects. Okay, pre-COVID. When you look at the pre-COVID era, we were just about limping back to some sort of stability. Please remember that the economy had anyway slowed down before COVID, and then COVID happened, as you rightly said. Now you've locked it into completely this is the third month of that happening, right? So I'd just like to leave behind this basic fact that the economy had anyway slowed down before COVID, and that's something which we have to always keep in mind. Broadly, when you look at India, though agriculture remains a smaller part of the GDP, but a large amount of our population is dependent on agriculture. There's no two ways of thinking on that. Broad part of the number of people dependent on agriculture as a sector is very large for their basic living, right? The monsoons over the last 2 years have been good, and there is prediction that this year the monsoon will also remain okay, right? So that should take care of the basic population of India is our fundamental view from a COVID or post-COVID perspective. Yes, manufacturing and services would be impacted in the near term. What happens is once you start taking a 2-3 year perspective on the same thing, the answers would be a little different. This year, there is no doubt that this year, which is financial year 21, is a washout year. I mean, let's face that, and then one has to brace for that too. What one makes out of the government when they look at the things, our view is that they've been trying to retain things from going from bad to worse. What we feel is we need to admit clearly that there is a concern and things are bad at this moment. That's somebody should stand up and admit that. The economy, see, broadly only moves when people start buying things or consuming things which they want and not what they need. But at this moment, Mohit, you'll agree when I say this, that people are buying only what they need. What is striking us on the positive side is broadly you have to also factor in that the oil price movement is a big benefit of India for India. The interest rates stand at a decade low, and in spite of currency movement, the forex reserves have remained mostly intact, right? And when FIs look at buying into any country, these are probably the 3 most important factors that play into their minds. And when things normalize, we feel these 3 factors will really benefit us from a long-term India flow perspective. But the bottom line is, yes, the recovery will be dependent on COVID. At the beginning of this entire COVID scenario, I just had one fear that you and me have to go back to work purely due to economic reasons. And that is the only fear which is coming true. So that's the only disconnect. Otherwise, when you answer this question from a 2-3 year perspective, I think the answers will be very different. Yes, from a short term perspective, it looks a little different. It will depend on how people bounce back.
Very, very interesting take, Swaroop. And perhaps I would like to pause here for a minute, summarize it for the viewers of Moneyfront and for everyone's benefit. So what you're basically saying is, looks like this year kind of is a washout year. I think we should just put it aside and think that whatever we are doing, all investments, all economic or market related factors have to be pegged a year down the line, and then we have to assess our position from that perspective. Basically, you also believe that agriculture will continue to drive the economy ahead. I think perhaps monsoon is likely to be good this year, which is what you're highlighting, and we've had good monsoons for the last 2 years as well. And our forex reserves are strong. Basically, FII flows should likely should continue to be attracted towards the country. So overall, you're saying fundamentally the only problem right now is for someone out there to admit that there is a problem, and that has to be addressed. So that I completely take your point out there that realization is more.
Other way could be is that probably the system is waiting for the right moment to come in, and many people have wanted probably a cash outflow from the government, which has not happened. Maybe the government is waiting for that. There is enough money there. I don't think money is the issue. So it could also be a wait and watch is something which we could summarize also.
I think perhaps we need a catharsis kind of a moment where some outburst happens, or there is a trigger for a structural reform in the economy, and something kind of comes out of that. But yeah, so all in all, for all those who have joined late, perhaps we are in conversation with Swaroop Mohanty, CEO of Mirae Asset Management, and his take so far has been that this year is a painful year. But I think we should all base our assumptions and our market outlook to next year and start looking beyond what happens after the market recovers, the economy recovers, and all of us are back in our offices. And perhaps I and Swaroop are talking from the same cabin. So yeah, so we can conduct one session together, sitting together. I think that's where we are headed to. Okay, we get you, Saru. Let's come to more Mirai related stuff now. So given what the scenario is, given the Indian markets, given the way global markets have been behaving, given the way liquidity scenario is in the country and the COVID scenario, how at Mirai are you positioning your portfolios? What are your fund managers doing currently? What is your take with respect to your equity schemes?
See, Mohit, I think one thing which I've liked about our portfolios is that, we've remained diversified across sectors at all points of time. When you look at our 12-year track record, which we are in now, I think that would come out very large in our portfolios if you track them. And during this entire downturn of the market, we've remained completely diversified and remained to what we were. Okay. But the market movement, if you see, has given us some opportunities. And bear with me when I say this, that if you look at some of the large companies across sectors, some of the price destruction which has happened is far larger than possibly the value destruction which will happen in the future. And that is has given us a good margin of safety, and the risk of investment has been fairly low. So thanks to people like you and your investors, we've had good inflows over the last 3-4 months. So the team has taken benefit of some of those stocks which were available at good prices. The other thing is, some of the stocks we had not bought just in December because we had not agreed to those prices. So that could also be added. And the third thing obviously is when you look at the broad portfolio, some misses could also be corrected over this period. So we've been buying consistently in the entire downturn, and that's, I think, something which has helped us in this entire COVID 4-5 months. We believe we have high quality stock portfolios. Due to some financials in the portfolio, we've seen some quotational losses, and that's a factor of the benchmark, right? We believe that these are quotational losses, and when the rebound happens, they should come back. We have no problems with the stocks we own. But as a fund house, we believe that, or our view is, asset allocation happens at your end, Mohit, and hence we are always a fully invested portfolio. We buy when we get money to buy. So
I was just about to ask you that do you hold cash positions in the portfolio?
No, we don't. And this is Mirae Asset globally. We don't take cash positions because, finally, that should happen at your end with discussions with your investor, and you would allocate to cash or liquid or to long debt or equity. But once you give us money to buy equity, we will buy equity. And we've seen benefits of that post 2008. If you go back to 2008, especially because that was the last crisis which we saw of this amount, those funds which were fully invested really rolled back the market. Or if you see this is too short a time to really talk about, look at the way the funds have caught the entire pullback a bit, though short, because of being fully invested. So there are merits of it which we definitely ride.
Interesting. I'll just take one question which we have on the chat and then perhaps again join back. So the question is, do you see withdrawals happening from the market because of volatility or liquidity crunch and perhaps investors pulling out at losses maybe? So what are the trends you are seeing? I think that's where the question is leading to. What are the trends which you are seeing with your investors? Are you seeing redemptions happening? What is it like?
See, one has to acknowledge that we are working in a completely digital scenario. We are accepting applications only through the digital mode, and the physical mode is stopped at this moment. So one has to look at that constraint. All the offices were closed till last week. We just opened some of the offices from Monday, and we started going back. So it was broadly a very truncated sort of environment. When you put that in perspective, I think the good part which has happened is broadly the SIP book has held good.
Wow.
We have broadly, and that's
I think that's at industry level also it's holding.
Yes, that's something which I have to really give credit to the behavioral change, and it will really help investors from a long-term perspective in a very good state, is my opinion. Yes, because of this truncated thing, and of course this market movement, and I have a small theory on that. The lump sum purchases have come down. There's no doubt on that. But that's a trend we are seeing, and that's something, Mohit, you and I have to really dig back again post this whole thing, that investors just seem to be very comfortable buying at market highs. At lows, they seem to be a little shy from the market, while it should be just the other way around. When you look at the broad market, we probably miss some of the good days in market, and
Theories
that's
perhaps are
something,
only good for reading. I've realized that
yeah,
in a hard way, actually.
that's something which you and I have to really, think about and work in because these opportunities don't come. In my career, starting from 94, 95 to 2000, I've seen just 5 such instances. As an investor, I have not missed it this time.
Wow, wow. Okay. So just a quick divergence again from the topic, and it's not very often that we catch hold of you. So I'd perhaps ask you some more personal questions. So what are you doing with your personal portfolio currently?
Yeah, I'm a very boring investor. I have a very steady sort of mathematical approach
Boring
to
is the only
investing.
thing which makes money. I keep repeating it with all my clients that the more boring your portfolio is, the less likely you are to look at it, and the more money you will always make.
Yeah, see, I had a very simple plan, and see, I'm a 70-30 investor, 70 equity, 30 debt, and I saw my 70% of the portfolio go down almost 30%. So I put a 60-day window to this COVID period. That was my view. Maybe it's getting a little more stretched, but I had thought in 60 days I will transfer that entire 30% loss from my debt and rebalance my portfolio, which I've done. And,
Wow.
and then at the end of the COVID, I would replenish my debt side. That was my view, which I've done. I think a little bit left, which I will invest in the next 1 week or two.
Very interesting.
I think this rebalance will really help me. And that's something which I learned in 2009-10, and then I'm practicing it this time. Hopefully, it should help me on the rebound, and I'm pretty confident that it will.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. And for all our viewers who are watching it out here, you are hearing it right from the horse's mouth. The right way to go about is asset allocation. Just keep checking your debt equity portion. If you see you're underweight any of the sides of the spectrum, please keep allocating to that side. And perhaps the market warrants, and I'm sure the market scenario is such that your equity is currently underweight on your agreed allocations. And that's where you should gradually build up positions and make use of these market levels, but cautiously, of course. So always take the starting note of this discussion, which is that markets and the economy per se is not looking great, at least for this year, and we'll all got to watch it together as we move on. Okay, so Swaroop, again, turning back and excuse me for crisscrossing a lot today, but
No problem.
thoughts as and when they're cropping my head, I'm just trying and picking your brains out there. So tell me something. We recently saw an arbitrage fund come out of Mirai Stable. In fact, today was the last day, and arbitrage as a category has done exceedingly well for cautious investors in this market. What's your view? What's your take on arbitrage, and why this launch at these times?
See, I think we launch a product on two conditions. One is if we feel we can do justice to the portfolio, and we feel that this is a good category. Let's face it, at the shorter end of investments, we are finally seeing asset allocation also happening. There's an overnight fund, there's a liquid fund, and then you can go to the liquid plus or money markets, and then comes the arbitrage fund. I feel our view is arbitrage fund is 6 months and above kind of money. Though we don't, I'm not a big fan of selling any product on a tax sort of advantage, but you can't take away the fact that arbitrage being classified as equity, it does bring its own tax advantage to the fund. So from a product perspective, this was a very important part, and see, the category is seen almost 15 years now, and investors have benefited dramatically well in this category. So we thought, we have a specialist within ourselves who's been on the arbitrage side for a long time. So we are backing ourselves to build a good track record, and then for us, the NFO is when we get the approval, we launch it. So we got an approval, we launched it. We look at an NFO as the starting point of of the NAV. Then we build track record, and you can check that with all the product launches that we've done.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just one criteria is whether we can build a good portfolio or we have the ability to back ourselves. So
but do you continue to believe there is reasonable money, or as in safe money, to be made in this category? The roll spreads keep varying and all. So
see, because of the spreads being varying, we feel it should be 6 months at least, the investment horizon. Right.
Understood.
And if you put the thing on a 6 month rolling, you would get your own answer to that. and on that, let's build the portfolio and demonstrate it would be a better way of saying than predicting that something will happen. And
Perfect, perfect. So
but we
proof,
feel on a 6-month horizon, it's a good product to have on your basket.
completely agree. Proof of the pudding is always in eating. But let me tell you,
But
whatever
again,
we have eaten so far. Sorry, yeah, continue, Sarup, continue.
No, but it has to be in relative terms. When you look at the arbitrage returns, it has to be relative to the liquid returns also.
Absolutely.
Liquid
Absolutely.
plus a bit. And if you see that category is also narrowed down a bit in returns. So that's how one has to view it.
Completely. And I was saying, Sarup, that proof of the pudding is always in eating, but the fact of the matter is whatever we've eaten so far from Mirai's table has been delicious. So, and has left a very good taste with
to say, but thank you so
investors.
much for saying
So
that.
I'll
Really
just
appreciate it.
summarize this arbitrage bit for our viewers. Perhaps what you're saying is come in with a 6-month view, at least bare minimum. Arbitrage can be a bit volatile in the interim, but look for returns which are in the category of liquid plus kind of plus a little extra over that
Right.
category. It's not a category which will give you equity returns, or it's not a category which will even give you debt returns. It's somewhere in the middle. The story lies somewhere out there. And you have to see it in the context of interest rates in the economy. And the last bit is it becomes attractive because of the equity taxation. So just for viewers to take a note of what the arbitrage category per se means, I kind of summarized this. So we'll take a couple of questions which we have on the board. There's one question from a gentleman, Mr. G. Singhar. He is asking, what's the view on consumption stocks for a period of 2-3 years from now? Should we increase exposure in them at this time? So maybe your view, as you were saying, staples versus discretionary, on that line, what's your view on consumption as a sector, or Mirai's take?
See, we've been not just Mire India, but Mire Global has, our view is consumption is a long-term 15-20 year sort of view. I mean, when we launched the consumption fund 7 years ago, we run a consumption fund. It used to be FMCG primarily. Okay, today consumption is a very broad sort of basket, and then it's events like this which give you that opportunity to buy into some of these stocks at very good prices. If consumption in India does not come back, India does not come back. Let's be very clear on that, right? So if you had bought into healthcare 2 years ago when it was looking bad, you would be making money today. When we launched the healthcare fund 2 years back, it was looking primarily pharma, right? And then in the next 5-6 years, you will see the entire bouquet of healthcare sort of unfolding. So if you look at two sectors which are completely beaten down and which probably people will not touch, is banking and consumption. So if you put 5 years ahead and look at it from that perspective, if both banking and consumption do not happen for India, India will not happen. So your call is as good as mine, and that's where I'll leave it at, because India is about consumption, India is about population, India is about rising income in that population. Then there is no change in that demography or that rising income. And that income, let me tell you, Mohit, you will agree with me, is that the big difference between this changing demography is that the view on what to acquire is changing dramatically. There's a big difference between our generation or my parents' generation and the next generation. People are buying into experiences more than physical assets, and that's where is the big story of India consumption, and that will continue. It could in the near term take a hit, and in the near term, I think people will go about, with the help of advisors like you, restructuring their expense statement a bit, which is the right thing to do. But people will go back and follow their aspirations for sure.
Very interesting take out there. So perhaps for Mr. Singhar, I think the whole take is that you have to believe, if you believe in the demographic story of India, you have to believe in the consumption story with a 5-year and a longish view. So just quickly, we have one more question from literally no one. Interesting handle out there. In this current market, which type of fund should be the best one to invest in? I think perhaps he's asking what category is the best one to invest in, more debt or keeping up on equity. So what's your take, debt versus equity?
See, I think broadly the question has to be answered a little earlier than that, as to why the person want to invest. And if one answers that question, then a kind of a return expectation can happen in consultation with the advisor. And from that comes the answer. I mean, you don't go to the medicine first, you first find out the need, right? The fund is immaterial, or the category of the fund is immaterial. First, you have to ascertain for yourself why you want to invest, and then the advisor will suggest. I am not a big fan of suggesting this is that or that. I might like a large cap fund, but you may not need that large cap fund, right?
Absolutely.
So it is totally dependent on the need of the portfolio. And the good part is at this point of time, all look good from 5-10 year horizon. These are good prices to buy in. So as per the need of the portfolio, one should buy.
Understood. So I completely agree out there, and perhaps there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's as per your specific profile, your circumstances, your risk appetite, and you might just want to get in touch with Team Moneyfront to figure out what exactly the allocation could be for your specific needs, whether you need to go more towards equity or more towards debt, and within equity also what category perhaps will suit well. So yeah, I think it's a very
I can substantiate that a bit more. I always give this example between me and my mother. My mother is a retired professor with pension. She buys small cap because she's reached her pension stage. I am creating a pension, so I stay away from that because my portfolio requirement is say 8 to 9%. But theoretically, if I were to tell you a retired professor is buying small cap and a working guy, it might look funny, but the need of the portfolios are different. I am creating my pension, so hence I have a slightly more cautious approach. She now has pension for the rest of her life, so she can do whatever she wants, right?
It's counterintuitive actually at times. Yeah. So I'll give you one very close example, and a lot of our clients are from the financial sector just because of my personal background and everything. And whenever I tend to speak with the investment bankers and the research analysts and try and get into their portfolios, trust me, Swaroop, out of 100 rupee of their portfolio, almost 95 to whatever, no, if not 100, 90 to 95 rupees is always in debt. And I keep asking them, with so much of cash inflow, big bonuses, why do you keep so much money in debt? You understand economy, you write your sector reports and everything, and their one line answer always has been, historically for last 15 years, it's never changed, is that we are any which ways, everything is exposed to equity markets. Our jobs are exposed there, our linkages are all there. So we don't need to take further exposure to investing.
Valid point. I mean, each to his own at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So that's what I was telling. Every circumstance is absolutely different. Every profile is absolutely different, and there is a unique identity to everything in the market. So perhaps I think that's a more intrinsic question. Okay, Swaroop, we are in the last part of this. As much as we would like to continue this chat, but we have few things to wrap up with you. Okay, I'll just take one more question, Swaroop, before we get into this, and that question is out there from a couple of guys, Rutuja and Shubham. They're asking, what's your opinion on the economic package which government has rolled out? And it's not just their question. I think it's a larger question in everyone's mind. What do you make out of that package?
See, at the end of the day, people have their views, okay, but the government does what they think is right. For people who wanted cash in hand, this was a disappointment. Like I said, maybe they have held back a bit. This is my personal opinion. I may be right or wrong. I do not know. But this looked like a long-term reform sort of package than a stimulus package of any kind. Yes, people who wanted cash or maybe feel that this was a 1991 moment and there is a lot to be done. Probably that does not achieve that. But when you look at fundamentally what they are saying, and just keep the COVID out of it, they have not said anything wrong. Whether they have addressed the COVID sort of scenario, maybe they have not. Maybe that creativity which was required could have been a little better. But what they have done is not wrong. Please understand, along with just this package, there is an RBI which has now got interest rates to a level which we've never seen in our life for a long time. And, there's so much to benefit of that post this COVID. So my only submission to everybody is not to conclude. My basic philosophy in life is not to conclude. Let some things play out. Too early to sort of comment and form conclusions. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Post that stimulus with the view that people had, the market should have corrected, right?
Yeah.
But it hasn't.
Completely agree. So I think like in everything in life, ye dil mange more, wo philosophy har jagah chalta hai. So perhaps there is a lot which the government can do, and expectations always keep rolling high in a country like ours. But I kind of agree with you that within the constraints, the fiscal constraints in which government operates and all, they're trying their best. And let's hope.
I mean, no, that's what I said. Give some amount of acknowledgement that the fiscal constraint would have gone better in the communication of this package. There's no denying that there is a constraint. Within those constraints, this has happened. But if you would have said that there is a constraint and this is there, I think it would have gone down a little better. Is our opinion.
Yeah.
But what
Completely.
they've done is, see, what they've done is nothing wrong at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I think they've taken few steps. More steps will always be welcome. I think economy needs a lot of help right now, and more the merrier. So okay, Swaroop, we will change the tack now for our viewers and everyone. And it's more like a personal kind of question, and you might just feel free to talk. What's your personal success mantra? What makes you so affable? And I've been telling people all across that Swaroop is perhaps one of those CEOs I've seen who's as grounded, as humble as anyone could be. So what's your personal success mantra? How do you manage your work-life balance and everything?
No, Mohit, I'll be a little honest on this. Not many people get this great fortune of working in this fiduciary role. Let's face it, in this COVID era, when there were a lot of industries which were shut down, as an industry, we were given critical status and we were allowed to work. That is the status of us in this industry, in this country at this moment. So,
Essential
first of all, very
services.
fortunate. Yes, we were essential service, and that's something which really gives me a kick in life, that, I could put a sticker on my car and go to office. It was like an ambulance, right?
Absolutely. I agree with you.
When you look at the fiduciary role that we do is a huge kick in life, that somebody gives us money and trusts us with their money with not a single rupee of guarantee from our side is the bottom line of everything. And handling somebody else's money is not an easy task, right? So from that perspective, I think very fortunate to be in this industry and having worked for almost 25 years. That's, I think, the biggest kick in life. I think not many people get to love what they do at work. So I'm one of those fortunate ones, and I'm not making up anything of this part. I love what I'm doing. Otherwise, one can do something else. Let me tell you, if I didn't sell mutual funds, I would very successfully be selling high-end music systems. I think a little better than what I do with mutual funds, right? But I like what I'm doing, number one, and I think my family and my upbringing sort of makes me what you are, and that is what is part of life. And Mumbai sort of flattens everybody, right? And it's a great city.
Completely.
Especially in finance, and all that adds together. You have a good bunch of friend circle, lovely professional work in the office, and that sort of keeps you going. The key to everything is to keep it simple and do only what you can do, and that's what we do. See, there are a number of things which you cannot do. Don't even think of doing that. I mean, because somebody else will do it better than you.
Yeah.
But what you can do, you should try to be the best in that.
I think those are the words which I will perhaps take out of this session. Do that one thing which you think you can really do it extremely well, and give your total heart out to that thing. And that one philosophy I think it just percolates down to your organization, to everyone you meet at Mirai, and that's so nice to hear, actually. And I think you're very true. Mumbai flattens you out, and perhaps these kind of COVID scenarios or pandemic scenarios just humbles you out in life and makes you realize that And one important point which you raised, and extremely pertinent, and I also myself I feel blessed to be in this industry, is managing people's money is a lot of fiduciary responsibility, a lot of trust, a lot of thing goes along with it. So I think it automatically makes you that much more responsible in life. So yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so Swaroop, we have one more question, and I would like to take that's a very interesting question before we get into the last section. I'm sorry, I'm just holding you back. Is it the good time to invest in gold, mutual funds or gold as an asset class? So what's your take on that?
See, more than gold, I always highlight the process of gold, which is so fantastic about Indians. I mean, let's face it, we Indians anyway have this fascination for that commodity, for that metal, which actually is a useless metal. It has no industry use, right? But a financial advisor like you somewhere has told us that it's a precious metal, and we have accepted that. right? I keep on giving, this is my core story, so I'll just repeat it. And let's face it, over the generation, there is one SIP date for all of us when it comes to gold buying. Somewhere it's called Akshaya Tritiya, somewhere it's called Dhanteras. On that day, it would be the most expensive thing to buy because of the demand and supply.
Completely.
But does anybody go to sell gold on that day? Nobody goes to sell gold on that day. Well, it's the most expensive day, right? If you tell don't buy on Dhanteras, buy 7 days later, it will be cheaper. The guy will laugh at you because this is not done. So gold has been one of the best understood investment vehicles for us Indians. We've not only bought it, we've held it over generations. And that is why, and you put that principle of investing in any asset class now, you'll make money. You buy a good thing and you hold it. And that's what gold has done. So some amount of portfolio allocation to gold is always necessary. It'll continue to make money, because for me, that is the best example of SIP. When it comes to mutual fund SIP, we talk about 5, 10, 15 years. That is a generation-wise SIP. Grandmother, mother, me, you've just gone on buying. Think about it. I mean, yeah, some amount of allocation I would definitely recommend on gold.
Completely. I think the way to summarize it is, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Historically, whenever you bought gold, it's been expensive. Historically.
Completely agree. I think people always buy it at peak levels, and I think the way to summarize it is, if you do a 100-year SIP or 100-year investment into anything, you'll make money. So,
correct.
I think that's quite fair to say. Okay, Sarup, here comes our last section, and for which I've been waiting, and not very often that we do it, but I think we'll not let that opportunity go with you. So we'll do a quick rapid fire with you. Yeah, so you just have to give us your take quickly, both related to the sector, related to the industry, and some bit of personal. So feel free to pass it if you don't wish to, but I'd like to know your takes. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so what's your favorite book, Swarup?
I'm very influenced by a person called Nick Murray. And On Becoming a Wholesaler is a book which has changed my life. It's my Bible at work. That's my favorite book. May not be pertaining to a lot of people, but it's changed my life. So that's my Bible.
Wow, On Becoming a Wholesaler. So I think
yes, so my counterpart in the US is called a wholesaler, and Nick Murray sort of writes down how to become a good wholesaler. So from how I practice courage to how I dress, he's sort of given it, how I build a relationship chapter wise, and that's my Bible. It's a book which is always there with me.
Okay. Very, very interesting. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, Last of the Mohicans.
Okay. Interesting. And okay, so
from a Hindi perspective, Jaane Bhi Do Yaro.
Good one.
I can see it any number of times.
Anyone can actually. So okay, which other than Mirai, any favorite scheme? Any favorite fund house?
A fund house, yes. Parag Parikh, I'm a big fan.
Okay, very, very interesting and different take. Any scheme other than Mirai which you invest?
See, bulk of my money is in Mirai, and that's 9 years I've been investing. So, I've been very fortunate. But yes, I'm invested in the Parag Parikh fund. Okay,
very good. Any fund manager other than your core team which you like or admire the most in the industry?
See, I am actually, as an individual, anybody who knows this far, I'm in awe of the fund management talent that is there in India. I mean, and it'll be unfair to pick up one, but everybody knows. You pick up a name outside this conference or webinar, I'll go through their history with you. I follow them. I'm very passionate about them, and the work they bring to the table. Managing somebody else's money is not easy, right? And they have to sleep with that responsibility. So the talent out there is unbelievable. It's been 25 years, and look at the 25 years track record which some of these gentlemen have brought to the table. I just hold them in unbelievable regard, and I can name 10. Wow. I can name 20.
Okay. You want to take a pick?
I see. Okay, not because I work in. Okay, this people will agree that in 2011 I put my money on Nilesh, and I'm very proud that I worked with him.
He's a
because
gentleman.
I'm a big, see, working with a person who has this capability of stock picking is phenomenal. But I have had the great fortune of working with some incredible fund managers in my life. Vetri Subramaniam of UTI, I hold in very high regard. I worked with Anand Shah. I worked with Kenneth Andrade. I've worked with Mr. Nilesh Shah of Envision. So I worked with Mr. Mahesh Patel. So I worked with Mr. Navneet Munath. So some incredible people. Bala of Birla. So I've been blessed to have worked with such incredible talent. So fantastic. Shiva Subramaniam, I think, is my all-time star.
Thank you.
So
Great,
very
great,
fortunate
great.
to have worked with them.
Interesting. Any favorite Indian or foreign investor whom you follow?
Yes, big fan of Mark Mobius. I think I follow. There's a book there also, Passport to Profits, which I would recommend everybody. He has some Mobius rules of investing. Big fan of Mark Mobius, the way he simplifies. And I'll just give you a small perspective since you asked. There's a very interesting thing he said when he gets down and he identifies countries, right?
Yeah.
So when he lands, the time taken from his aircraft to the taxi outside defines the bureaucracy of the country. Just think about it. Time taken from the aircraft to the taxi outside. When he gets into a taxi driver, he asks, and first time he takes a cab, local cab. He asks the taxi driver, how is life? And the way the taxi driver or the cab driver explains his life is broad life of the country. That's how he assesses. Then he gets into his hotel and goes to the next nearest newspaper vendor, asks how's business. The business of the newspaper vendor will define the economy. That's how he assesses. Very fascinating how these people invest. We think it is balance sheet. And if you go into Warren Buffett, it's a different world altogether. But I am very fascinated with Mark Mobius.
The book you said, could you just repeat the name for our viewers? Passports to Profit. Okay, very interesting.
Must read. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Absolutely. Okay, last few quick ones, and these are very quick ones. You just can perhaps give a view. Where would you invest for 20 years? Indian equity or US equity?
Indian. I'm a big fan of Alpha Generation by Indian fund managers. India still.
Okay, and in India, where would you put your money? Large caps or mid-small caps?
At this moment, the large caps are available at such prices. I'll not miss them. I'm not missing them.
Perfect. What do you prefer personally, stocks or mutual funds?
Mutual funds.
Mutual funds. And what do you watch regularly? News channels or newspapers? What's your preference?
Newspapers by choice, but news channels I have to watch. But would like to read the newspaper. I'm waiting for it to open and the paper to come back. Every day I joke with my wife, can we go out and read the paper? Has the paper come just to, I ask her every day.
Completely. One thing which I miss the most, newspapers.
Yes.
Okay, so last one, Swaroop. I know you are quite active on social media also, which is a great thing to have from any CEO of an AMC, and I think you are one of those persons who are always reachable through all these means. So, what's your personal pick? What do you prefer, Twitter or LinkedIn?
I think both come very different. I think people in Twitter come directly to me with their queries, with their grievances, and I get to know the pulse. And some agree with me, some disagree with me. That is fine, but I get to know what is expected out of me from the job, and people can tell you some things directly, and that's the best part of Twitter. LinkedIn gives you a very professional sort of outlook and helps you build your brand also. Both have their pluses, and I've never been on Facebook. But these two, yes, I've been really building very well. Both have their huge positives.
So today we are beaming you on Facebook, huh, Swaroop? Let me tell you that.
No, Facebook was a bit too sudden, this exposure into this virtual world. I find it very difficult to keep track of my real friends, to go out and look for them on the virtual world. That somehow didn't appeal to me, so I've never been on Facebook.
Perfect. For all those who would want to follow, Swaroop is fairly active on Twitter and LinkedIn both. You should definitely follow his handle, and I think he is one guy who would fascinate you with his views very often. And thank you, Swaroop, so much for taking time out for us, for Moneyfront viewers, and we would definitely post this across our social media platforms. Thank you so much. Your views were fascinating, and I think it's a very, very interesting conversation for all of us. Stay safe, and hope to see you soon in person.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mohit. You please take care and wish you all the best in all your endeavors. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Swaroop. Thank you. Have a good day.